Meeting to order. First off, consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept the previous minutes. If there's no questions or questions about those.
Motion.
All right. Rachel's made the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm not. Okay, second is policy. We have 4 on first read. Is there any questions on those? There's no questions. I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
I'll make a motion.
Who made the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Second read, we just have the one. Is there any questions on that one or not adding it? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion.
Sarah made the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, recognition of visitors. We have 2 on Zoom.
So Jared does not want to speak.
Okay.
Is Erin joining me?
Okay, Erin wants to ask a question.
Oh, she's going.
Erin wants to ask a question.
Sure. Aaron, what can I do for you?
I can't put it on camera. I'm trying to. I can show my face. I'm not. Okay, I guess I can't show my camera. So, looking at the agenda, Morgan's gonna do a presentation on the budget coming up, or like fiscal year 24, 25, and 26. And I'm curious about just in terms of salaries. What percent increase did Morgan use when he created these new salaries for the new budget, for administrator salaries, for teacher salaries, and for support staff salaries? Like we all know that health insurance is going up. And a lot of times, so I don't really care about that. I just want to know, like, what calculus did you use to compute teacher salary increases, administrator salary increases for those fiscal years? And if that information is publicly available, it's not on the agenda. Like I can't like there's no clickable thing on that. Or if I want to look at that, should I file a public records request? That's it.
I mean,
So
do you want
I will be going over that in the budget section. We are in negotiations with both the teachers and the support staff, so my intent was to take the board into executive session at the end of the meeting and talk about what assumptions you want in there in the final budget.
Right.
But that would not be something that would be public because we are negotiating both unions.
Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we need to reprioritize any?
So first, I'm going to apologize to you. We had our pre-meet. There was a piece of the agenda that I had forgotten about, and so Todd is here, and he is presenting information about you already approved a class trip for the end of this year, and he's hoping to present a trip for the following year to give kids more opportunities to fundraise. So I'd love to move him to this part of the meeting if we could.
Thank you, Todd.
We have some slides from EF. Just want to thank everyone for letting me come tonight to speak. You just had me in to share about our last trip, and I know you guys made time for the recent trip proposal. We're proposing a trip to Japan, and we met with students who might be prospective travelers to discuss like where they'd like to go. And we provided instead of 5 or 6 different places that they could travel, and in the end, going through some process eliminating, and they came to a consensus that Japan is where they would like to travel. So we're here tonight to present this trip. You click recording. So it'll be myself and Katie again. As trip leaders, we're hoping to bring Rachel as our travel companion as well. It was good to have individuals in our both our buildings working with our students, and it would be definitely a joint trip that we would plan. You've guys seen this in the last presentation. This is something that Yep puts in, but you know, I think one of the biggest things in this trip is to have our students experience a different part of the world. I don't think we've ever sent any students to that side of the world. It's been a lot of Europe trips. I've taken kids over the years to Costa Rica, but you know, this is a totally different opportunity, and the best way for kids to really understand different perspectives and different people is to experience their culture firsthand, and that would be what we hope to do with our students. Thank you, Corey. So the 11-day program, we've added the 2 extension days to this itinerary, and we'll talk about the itinerary a little bit. The extension is the Hiroshima part of the program, and then we thought that if we're going to Japan, that would be an important piece of this experience. So it felt worthwhile adding 2 days. You can click. So some of the trip experiences, we would start in Tokyo. It's the modern city experience. There would be a rich piece of learning about technology, visiting the technology centers. So working with experts there around that. We've looked to go from there on a high-speed train to Kyoto. We'd be passing along the way the lakes and the mountains, the scenery of Japan. It's just beautiful. We're aiming for a trip period in April, so our folks potentially get to see the cherry blossoms and all that kind of stuff as well. We'd be visiting some of the national parks. We can go to slide 2 on this.
Todd, April 2026, correct?
Yes, April 2026. And that's on the slide coming up. Kind of jumping ahead. But you can see like some of the things with seeing the different shrines, temples. A favorite experience for students would probably be the ride in the cable car. And this is you can't see in this picture, but being able to see Mount Fuji from the cable car in that area. Castles, Buddhist temples, shrines, like I said. We'd spend some time at some of the natural areas, there's bamboo forests that we visit. And then we get on another bullet train there, and next slide. From there we end up in Hiroshima. One more slide, sorry. And from there, there's visit some of the islands in that area. We go to the Peace Memorial. So those would be some of the different pieces of itinerary that we would attend to along the way. It is a 9-day trip originally with a 2-day extension for this 11-day program. It's not really 11 days in country. You got your flight day, maybe a travel day there, a travel day back, and we also with the way the flights, night flight, part of that second day is also travel. So we thought it's worthwhile adding the 11-day program here. We put it in a window here. We can't go past April 25th for the return because it's Golden Week in Japan the following week. So we have to be completing our trip by that point. So depending on the dates of the calendar, you will work with us about that. We have flexibility. If the dates don't work, we could, for instance, change to a February trip. We're trying to work this so it tags on with a break as well. It'd be much nicer to travel to Japan in April than it is in February. I feel like in Vermont a little bit, places with snow and that sort of thing. So the itinerary includes round-trip airfare, hotel stays. All the students get room accommodations and decent hotels. meals, breakfast and dinner. The EF, part of their program is to have kids purchase a meal while they're there. That's usually lunch, so they actually have to, intermingle with the public, to go and order the meal. It's not just presented to them, so it's part of their experience. All the transportation, expert guides, the driver is all part of our tour. And depending on how many students are on the trip, they would have multiple tour guides with us working with our trip. They usually have, it's around 1 to 10 often with tour guides. For these. All the entrance fees are part of the experience. If you click one more, Courtney. So why travel with EF? Again, they provide some of the safety security if things change. We can change our trip. We can change our trip location. It won't be Japan at that point if something occurred and we couldn't travel there. They would work with us for an alternative trip. They have to meet standards or accredited program. Click one more. And Lynn was asking a little bit about some of the travel insurance and things like that is provided. So again, with some flexibility in the travel and the changes. Whenever there's an issue, these travel partners we work with, like EF, have support lines. They help work with our families if something happened and we needed to have contact. So they work really hard on the ground if there's some sort of medical issue or whatnot. If you click one more, it talks about the insurance and it's like, so we do with this trip, in all their trips, it comes with a standard general liability insurance that's there. Students can also add in a liability insurance that is allowing for really recouping their funds and everything for almost anything that could happen. So that's a $400 charge though for students to add that. So automatic flexible trip, and this is the peace of mind where you can purchase additional travel insurance. There's those slides in there. Try to make this short. I know you've had a lot of conversations around student travel recently. Cost-wise, it's about a $6,000 trip. We wanted to start early. Nice thing is EF provides different kinds of ways to make a payment plan. You can sign up, pay $500 in bill payments towards the end. You could do something where you're putting monthly payments in. You can do a little of both, so they'll work with families to do that. The pricing, kids would have a $200 discount for enrolling early, and the reason we want to be on this board meeting is if kids enroll before the end of the year, they actually get this year's prices. So if they enroll next year, they can enroll next year, they can enroll all the way up through just before we want to go. But again, it's going to cost some more at that point. I don't know. Trips usually go up $200-300 a year, so it's another $200 discount basically for enrolling now.
Excellent.
Any questions from the board?
This would be for Richford and Enosburg offered awards.
Yeah. We haven't really advertised at Enosburg yet, but we've already got parents asking us about the trip, so the kids all talk, and there's at least 2 families that's looking to go. We reached out for me I said I need to put you guys on the back burner for a minute, let us present to the board.
How much interest do you have in Richford?
I think I have a meeting set up for students next week just to hear, to invite their parents, and we have 21 students coming to that meeting.
And what's the capacity?
If we can get 30, we have a private trip.
Mhm.
Okay, if it's less than 30, they could book us with another school group. The first time I traveled, actually, I traveled with a group from Massachusetts as well. So we were a small group, and, there's some pros and cons to traveling, but I think it's meet some new friends from a different school.
The amount of interest for this trip too, and I'm speaking about this because my son attended the trip to Costa Rica last year. I was able to chaperone and that's why I was able to go. But the amount of interest in this trip from these students was huge. I mean, I think we opened it up and we were full within just the first couple of days.
We have 25% of the students who travel to Costa Rica wanting to
Doing it.
travel this trip. So, you know, it's the returning customers, as we could say.
And is it fully family funded, or are there like fundraisers or other things?
We do work with some fundraising. Our goal would be to hold off some of the fundraising to get the France and England trip, let them get started. We're hoping like they'll be closing out some of the fundraising by the time we get to March, and then we really pick up our fundraising in earnest there. So the people who sign up, their families sign up, we're going to communicate well that you got to be ready to make the first payment on your own, and then we will work with you to fundraise. And we were able to fundraise for some families. It ranged from almost paying for their trip last time to some of our families, you know, chose to self-pay. Others, the average person probably paid about 40% of their trip.
And we only
Fundraising.
fundraised from October to February. So it was a short time frame, and those kids really worked hard on this fundraising.
So the three of us really have worked hard to have our kids first pre-plan, pre-experience some of the things to get ready for the trip. I guess we try to work hard to get the kids ready to go. We try to build groups before we go, and we try to help students make the trip before we go through fundraising. So those are our three goals from the last time, and we carry that into this experience as well.
Anything else from anybody? Are you looking for a decision tonight, or you just?
Either or, I don't know if you guys need to discuss, and then
I just was
Beth
discussing.
can let us know. Yeah,
And then we'll give you a decision next.
that's all go. We'll let our administrators know that we're ready to communicate with families that we'll have a meeting.
So can you reiterate the timing for the special pricing? Is that the end of this month?
Yeah, we have a tentative meeting scheduled with families next Wednesday, Thursday. We'll run 2 meetings at both schools. So if we hear from you guys, you can let me know decisions, and then I can,
Right.
you know, yeah. We already sent out a save the date for our families, so we'll let them know that if it's approved or not from this point, that we can continue the meeting.
Todd, how many chaperones are included in that?
It's 1 per 6.
One per
Exactly.
six.
So it's good with our ratios.
And one other question, is the pricing 1 per room, 2 per room, or more than that?
A lot of times it's depends on the room sizes. Some it's doubles, but some of the places we go, if the rooms are large and they're set up for like triple occupancy or something like that, then it'd be that sort of thing. So there's no private rooms for kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you guys.
Sure. I couldn't talk any students to come today, so I am doing the next best thing. Recently, actually, I've had a lot of questions and a lot of feedback about our student conferences and other times about, wow, I did not know you did that at Cold Hollow, or I did not know they could do that at Cold Hollow. So I wanted to make you guys aware of our program of studies and just kind of quickly highlight each program and what students get or guaranteed to get in the program. So I'm not going to go through this page by page, but if you do open up the first page, it's all of our programs, all 7 of our programs. And if you don't know, all of our programs have either college credits or industry certifications, work-based learning, and this just kind of highlights that. So if you look at automotive, each one of these is pretty much set up the same. Whereas if you look at the content of automotive, that's there, but the employability skills, that's consistent across the board. That's something that we strive for in all of our programs. And then if you look at either industry recognized credentials in auto, or some have dual enrollment options, or some have both, and those are the things that students get. So in automotive, they are getting almost seven industry certifications: Vermont State Inspection, Snap-on, Scan Tool Training, Multimeter Training, Automotive Lift Institute Training Certification, ASE Maintenance and Light Repair, and OSHA 10. If you skip ahead to wherever, you can just see what they have. If you skip ahead to medical careers, for example, they are getting 12 college credits. They're getting medical terminology, human growth and development, intro to nutrition, intro to healthcare. Their IRC, their credentials are LNA, bloodborne pathogen, first aid, CPR, AED, youth mental health. So really, this just highlights, and what did we use this for? What this highlights is what students will receive in their 2 years in a program here. Down at the bottom, it talks about sample occupations and co-op opportunities. Last year, our numbers were 79% of our students engaged in some sort of work-based learning. Just to put that in perspective, the target from the state was 46% of our students should have been experiencing that. We're at 79%. For credits, 30% of our students earn college credits. The goal from the state last year was 20%. So we exceeded that. And then credentialing, we had 51 of our students earn credentialing, and our target was 23%. So, we're far exceeding the state target set for us, which is great. We use this after our 8th graders come and visit, or after the 10th graders come and visit. We hand this out, we make it available online, just so they can remember the teachers if they made a connection with the instructor. That's why we include that on there. And we just really want people to know that, here are the things you're going to earn, or can earn through coming to a program called College. So it's not a very exciting highlight, but it is something we're very proud of, and it's really been affirmed. I was at a conference recently. I talked to multiple people around the country, and it really was affirming to see how, I don't want to say far ahead we are necessarily, but I mean they're just like getting into how to teach and assess employability skills. And I shared how we do it, and they were amazed how they were talking about how they're trying to work with their local college or their community college to establish dual enrollment and fast forward opportunities. And I'm like, I've got classes that are at 9 to 12 credits already, and they were just amazed that Vermont, and I'm not taking credit for Cole Hollow, but I think Vermont in general is ahead of the nation in a lot, especially the dual enrollment. And then the industrial recognized credentials. And having the outside agencies come in, we have the Department of Transportation come in to do the state certifications, we have the Board of Nursing come in to do the LNA testing, so, so the 3, and work-based learning, we have a lot of pressure. So those areas that tech centers are striving for, I think we're doing very well, and I just wanted to highlight that, and that kind of, you can have that, and just,
You said twice, not very exciting. I think it's actually very exciting to see all this put together and to see all of the opportunities that students here have. And as Dean and I have talked about before, we have kind of a unique situation with this CTE center, is that we have 2 high schools, and the CTE center primarily serves the needs of those 2 high schools with a few kids that come in from other communities, but primarily these are opportunities that our kids here get to experience, and that's not the same in all communities across the state in terms of access. And I think that the work that this school and this team has done around those employability skills was ahead of their time, because you're many years in now at this point, and then all of the opportunities for those the IRCs and the credits that kids leave with And the other thing that you didn't mention that I just wanna mention is that it's always amazing to me at the end of the year to see the amount of funding that kids from this school receive in terms of opportunities for going to a trade school or going on to college. There's a lot of opportunity that comes to those kids from their participation here.
And could I just add 2 things?
Sure.
One thing that I really appreciate is that you allow oftentimes some of our seniors who have not gone through the medical careers program to go second semester of their senior year in the afternoon to receive their LNA if there is room. I appreciate that flexibility. And I don't think you mentioned CDL, did you? Not CDL, is that the driver's license? Is that the right?
That might be in some of the IRCs.
I mean, that's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. We've had several students from Richford and I know Enosburg over the last 2 or 3 years, and that's something recent that you've added
Yeah.
that have graduated with that licensure, which means they are graduating or with the ability to earn a good wage. And some of them have gone on to college and used that on the weekends and stuff to pay for their college. So those 2 things I really appreciate.
Good job, Nate.
That's
Anything else?
morning.
Okay, a couple of informational things in my reports. We still have not seen the FY '24 draft out yet, but I expect we'll at least get the supervisory union draft in the next few weeks. Courtney is gonna tee up the budget slideshow. While she's doing that, we are planning on billing back this week a pretty significant amount of tuition, mostly to NMV, but to all the schools that you have, all the towns you've taken kids from, both for your 2 high schools and for the tech center. And so that, I think, will more than make up for the loss in terms of the number of tuition bills we are sending out for this year. Those sending towns are allowed to wait until next year to pay you back so that they can build it into the budgets as we're doing now. I don't anticipate NMV will need to do that. That's the biggest one. Going through the same familiar slideshow, on this schedule, we're at our 3rd board meeting, December 10th. Hopefully on target to finalize this budget on January 14th. In terms of other numbers that we're waiting for, in the draft that went out today, you saw my estimate for the long-term weighted ADM, and then the tax department's estimate for the final CLA figures. Those should be finalized within the next couple of weeks, but I don't anticipate that they will change much from what we have in front of you. Your annual meeting is now conducted entirely by Australian ballot on town meeting day. We still elect a moderator and a clerk by ballot. The clerk has duties such as maintaining a checklist for the district. The moderator, we still have to elect. They don't really have to do anything. As we'll see on one of the next slides, you don't even need them at your informational meetings anymore. We do need to schedule at least one informational meeting between February 22nd and March 3rd. Lynn and I will be bringing back proposed dates next month for that. We need to coordinate the official meetings with NMV and ER boards. And then we would assume that you would want to do a second unofficial informational meeting in your other community. 2 seats up for election this go round. I believe it's Devin, and I think yours is up. I think so. Yep. So we will get you petitions together, signatures to run again. Those are going to be due to Billy Joe, the Enosburg town clerk, who's also the district clerk, by the 4th Monday in January. And we'll remind you of that time as we get closer. We like to keep anchoring these discussions on the 3 board goals. The first, academic proficiency, is measured by reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. social emotional learning, those targets that are up there for all grades, and then student-centered learning for all students for starting with the class of 2028 who has just entered high school this year. The enrollment figures we will share with the information we send out to your voters. Nothing really changed here or on the next one that we can go to. Based on some of the work that the AOE has been doing and trying to push a lot more data out, we're finding a few areas where their numbers aren't exactly jiving with ours, and so I'm trying to clean those up and so that we're at least talking about the same number of kids. Probably has to do with when they were gathering data. So those numbers may change a little bit as we go throughout the year. We've spoken about these before. Health insurance increase of 12% in terms of the premiums. We are in negotiations with both unions. And on the plus side, you are seeing a potential increase in high school students from NMV, or at least we're likely anticipating that. NMV does not have all of their incoming tuition bills in, so those numbers are still not quite final, but they have a relatively large 8th grade class compared to their senior class again. We've got 5 slides here showing the proposed staffing changes. These changes are budget to budget. We'll go through them relatively quickly because only one school has changed since your last meeting. You can see Enosburg Elementary moving a guidance counselor in from the Consolidated Federal Programs grant and reducing a paraeducator. At the high school, some fractional changes in terms of 2 teaching positions. At Richford Elementary, reduction of a half-time counselor position, but moving an interventionist in from that CFP grant. Richford High School, again, some fractional movement in terms of teachers. And then at Cold Hollow, adding back a half-time guidance teacher. When we were at round 3, I think, of the budget discussion last year, in the Cold Hollow budget, we cut out half of a custodian and half of a guidance position. And Nate's asked to increase that guidance position back to full-time. Before we go on from there, as was tipped by Aaron's question earlier, I do plan to take you into executive session at the end of the meeting to talk about my assumptions on salary. It's not necessarily linear because the goal of the budget is to make sure that we have enough money to do the things we want to do next year. We don't worry too much where those lines are. So I'll talk broadly about what I've done to try to prepare you for the, where those 2 support staff agreements are likely to end. You're also in negotiations with a lot of your administrators, and we don't know where those will end. And it's very unlikely any of those agreements, support staff, teachers, or admins, will be settled by the time you warn your budget. So we're basically just trying to get to a place where we're comfortable that there's enough money in the budget for any and all of those settlements. So we're not looking at a budget passing in March and we're immediately having to cut staff to cover that. We also, related to personnel, is we have 2 SRO positions. Those contracts are up at the end of this year. There was a lot of discussion last year about whether we wanted to continue that service or not. If that is something that the boards want to continue to do, we really should be in negotiations right away to try to get a real dollar amount.
When do you need a decision on that?
We don't need a final decision until we're about ready to sign a contract. If you are sure tonight that you're not going to go in that direction, I want to be prepared to pull it out of the budget. And if you're sure tonight that you want to bring them back, I want to get a firm number from the sheriff so that we're not behind the 8 ball and we actually get a contract in front of us. And then the last thing related to salaries, we could have it tonight. The last thing related to salaries is related to these 3 positions that we're moving in from the consolidated federal programs. Those of you on the supervisory union will get a deeper dive into this at your meeting next week. We have a new administration coming in January. They've said repeatedly that they want to eliminate the Department of Education. We currently have 16 staff across the SU who are paid out of the CFP grants and 22 that are paid out of the IDFE grant, and those are our two biggest streams of federal money. The after-school program is also federal money, and then we have some relatively smaller streams as well. So for FY26, I would say those funds are all definitely at risk and need to be having conversations and being prepared to make some shifts if we want to. We have not issued RIFs for supervisory union staff since before COVID, I'm guessing.
Right.
And this may be a year that the supervisory union board wants to do that. And say in a normal year, it's been a long time since we've had a normal year, but in theory, we should already have a federal FY25 budget done on the books, and that's what's going to be funding our next year grants. That budget is not anywhere near final yet, and there's a lot of uncertainty over whether it's going to get done before the administration changes or not. The incoming OMB director, which is the Office of Management and Budget, has called for an elimination of the CP program, which is has been giving free meals to our kids. It also allows us to claim relatively high poverty rates for all of our towns. If that changes, we might find some of our towns no longer eligible at all for CFP money, even if it comes in. I think on this side, probably Enosburg High School is the one that's at risk. It's a bigger conversation on the NMV side. And then some of the incoming folks are already proposing budgets, again, for this year, cutting that Title I grant by 25% and cutting Title II, and those are the two main titles for CFP, completely out. So this may be a problem that we're facing in April. That is really the driver to moving some of these positions into your local budget. Principals have all felt they need to keep them, and we've kind of known that even in good years we need to do that because we've been sort of spending down some of the grant money that we were unable to spend during COVID, and we're kind of catching up to that, so we're settling back down to a more normal grant level for CFP. So that's a lot of personnel to dump on you, and I'm happy to pause there and try to answer any questions on that, and we obviously can get back to it at the end of this presentation.
I'll add one thing, the reduction in force at your January meeting, I'll be bringing that to you to have the board consider whether or not you want to authorize me to send the letter to the union. And what that really does is it just puts them on notice that the board may need to have to contemplate a reduction in force. Haven't had to do that because of the hiring scenario, but there is so much instability in the federal funding piece, and we have so many staff members that are funded. It's about $4.5 million total. I think that was the right number. So it's a scary situation and not know which way that money is going to go for next year.
That was my question, Lynn. So conservatively, $4.5 million is the amount at risk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it all is at risk because I'm not talking about eliminating, but a pretty large percentage of those. Well, 2A, they are talking about it.
2A completely, Title I, they're talking about 25% cut this year. I would be keeping my eye on that. I think we will still get some sort of federal funding for the food service program. Doesn't sound like it would necessarily be at the same level. And as far as I know, no one's talking about cutting special ed funding.
Which is that
So I
IDFE.
think that one is relatively safe. In terms of what we get, that's maybe $750,000 in a normal year. So it's not nothing, but it's not the biggest. stream. Okay. Up on the board is the article that will appear on your March ballot, just reminding you that the language that compares this year's spending to last year's spending was returned based on the legislative session last year. These pie charts are familiar. They will go in the information we send out to voters. This one, what we buy, really just is there to highlight that about 3/4 of your budget is in terms of the people that you pay, and most of that remaining quarter in light blue are services you buy from other folks, and that's mostly their people. So in this one, it's primarily special ed from the supervisory union, transportation and food service from the supervisory union. And then the next slide, what we do, same budget, a slightly different look. The section in green is considered to be instruction, so this is really teachers in front of kids. The section in blue is support services, so you've got things like your guidance counselors and nurses in there, technologies in there, school administration, again, those central services, which would be primarily food service, transportation, special ed, and then operation and maintenance of your buildings. There is a section in the other district for debt. You guys have very minimal debt load right now. We're paying off maybe the last year of the middle school windows in Enosburg that we did 5 years ago. This is actually the same as the draft that I had sent out to you yesterday. I had an opportunity today to revisit it. But if you look in that proposed budget column, the second to last set of numbers, you'll see how the tax rate is calculated. So the budgeted expenditures, that first line would be the amount of money that ultimately is supported by your voters. We then back out local and grant revenue. For this district, it's primarily tuition payments for the high school and for the Voc Center, and it's primarily from NMV towns. We also take out the use of prior year fund balance. What I'm showing here is $430,000. That is half of what we anticipate the audit is going to say you had left over at the end of fiscal year 24. You can choose to ask the voters to allow you to do things other than buy down the tax rate with that money. So in the draft that we have here, as we've done in years past, we are asking for permission to put half of the leftover money into your capital reserve fund. You as the board can kind of decide if that's the right number to put in front of them. If you lower that number, it would bump up the number here and it would drive down the tax rate. It would also mean that there's a bigger cliff next year when you potentially don't have that money, you have to make it up. Conversely, you can ask them to put more money into capital reserves, lower this amount, and that will drive the tax rate up a little bit. So subtracting those two numbers out gives you your education spending, that $18.7 million figure. That divided by the number of kids in the long-term weighted average daily membership gives you a per pupil ed spending amount. That is divided by the dollar yield to get a district level tax rate. So that's a pre-CLA tax rate. If you go to the next slide, Courtney, we will start with that pre-CLA tax rate. On Enosburg divided by their CLA, it would end you up with a $1.40, almost $1.41 tax rate, or a 2-cent increase over last year. In Richford, with that higher CLA, it brings them to 94.5 cents, which is actually $0.015 below what they're paying this year. Again, the decisions we make, both in spending, my projections in terms of what I can expect for tuition kids coming into the district, your use of the fund balance, and then any other last-minute changes that we get to either the long-term rated ADM or the CLAs will change those numbers a bit. In this graph, you'll see the history of the tax rates. Red on the bottom is Richford's tax rate. Green on top is Enosburg's, and then that black line that runs through the middle is the district level tax rate. I do want to call your attention to the big increase in the district level tax rate for ER from 25 to 26, even as Richford's tax rate that people see on their tax bill fell and Enosburg's would be relatively the same. That has to do with the legislation passed last year that changed how we calculate the CLA. So I will try to come up with some talking points to explain to folks. There are very few people, even in my position or in Lynn's position, who really understand the mechanics of that and the why of it. It is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. I wanted to move some of the blame for tax rates away from the CLA and towards the district budgets. And so there will be a bit of a learning curve for the voters who kind of care about the calculation. Should be an easier conversation in Richford with this budget if the tax rate's going down, and we'll see where the final Enosburg rate ends up. This chart will be in your book and in the information we send out. This is current year homestead tax rates. I know it's hard to see. The two lines on the bottom are our two districts. Enosburg is 6th from the bottom. NMV is, I think, 11th from the bottom. The lines in red are the other districts in Franklin County. The black line about a quarter of the way up is the Franklin County average, and then the statewide average right in the middle is for the state. You'll see in terms of tax rates, the range is from minimum of $1 up to about $1.80 something in the highest spending tax.
Morgan, you're gonna have that expanded like you did last year again, so we kind
We can certainly do that. This is the article asking the voters for authority to put some portion of that unreserved fund balance into the capital reserve fund. Again, we can tweak that number. We've historically just said we're going to try to take half of it and move it forward, and so that's what I have here as a placeholder. And that's possibly it for tonight.
any questions, anyone? Anything
And
else?
it's a speed round. Got relatively new board members on the board, and a lot of things like CLA have changed in the last year. So I am certainly happy to talk about this ad nauseum offline to anyone who wants to truly wrap their head around it. But I would say, at this point, almost 3/4 of the budget is staff. If you want to move it pretty significantly in either direction, it would be changing staff. We do want discussion on the SRO position, and then if you feel that I'm off base on where we're proposing using the fund balance, that would be good to know.
This RO position, does that have to be an executive, it's a contract or not?
I mean, it's valid to be an executive because it's contract negotiation. I think you would want to be open in terms of your decision to move forward or not, but in terms of the contract itself, that qualifies. Do you want to hold all your executives until the end?
Yeah. Yes. Anything else?
So we'll see you in executive.
Okay. So we'll start off with personnel. We don't have anything on hiring or resignations that require board action. Those are all informational. We still have some part-time or some open positions. We have a part-time, actually, maybe not. Part-time evening custodian, Cold Hollow. I'm not clear on that one.
We'll see a little bit.
Okay. We have a substitute teacher at Enosburg Elementary, a long-term sub. We're looking for paraeducator at Enosburg High School, potentially.
I think we're gonna scratch that.
Okay. JV softball coach, school counselor at Richford Elementary School. We're continuing to look for a school counselor there. Love to find a December grad, if anyone is listening out there. And then we are looking for the Enosburg schools, a head of maintenance that we have not yet found. I do have an executive session discussion under personnel that maybe we can hold until the end. In terms of retirement notifications, December 1 is the deadline for employees to notify us if they intend to retire at the end of the year in order to receive the benefit that's outlined in the collective bargaining agreement. And you do have one teacher, Ann Maury, who's a longtime literacy interventionist who we funded out of consolidated federal grant funding, and Ann has worn a variety of hats. She's worked in probably almost every school except Richford Junior Senior High School and Enosburg High School and Cold Hollow. Other than that, she's spent time doing intervention there, and she's also one of the teachers that worked at Flexible Pathways Academy during COVID and stayed on until that disbanded last year. So I would ask the board to move to accept the retirement of Ann Maury.
Motion to accept the retirement. Sarah made a motion, all those in favor?
Thank you. There's also the same time of the year, the second December 1st deadline is for teachers to notify us if they're making a column movement. So that means if they had a bachelor's degree and they have taken enough courses or they anticipate having enough credits to shift from the bachelor's column to the bachelor's 15 column, or bachelor's 15 to 30, or master's, and then it goes all the way up to master's 30. So you have 14 supervisory union teachers who have requested column movements, but the total column movements equals 21 because you have several teachers making a double move. So they might be going from B15 straight to the master's column because they've taken so many courses. So that has a total impact on your budget of $38,250 for all of the column movements.
That's SC list.
Oh, jeez.
Well, not all of them, like
No, it is
Alyssa
the
Ballender is not SU, but many of those people are SU.
You are correct. When you're talking about something else, I'm gonna get you the right list.
Okay.
Let me delete that.
They go to Morgan.
Same for Ann Maury.
And
Oh my
Ann Moore's
gosh.
not.
You know what I was doing? I was
I
prepping for
read
next
that
week's
now.
SU meeting while I was also finishing this up. So sorry about that. I had a little brain skip there. You have one retirement. One?
Yes, sir.
Your music teacher at
Enosburg Elementary.
right, music teacher at Enosburg Elementary School, Elisa Martin, who will be retiring after serving for a very long time the students in the Enosburg school system. So the real motion I'm gonna ask the board to approve is Elisa Martin's retirement.
Got a motion? Sarah made a motion, all those in favor?
Sorry about that. I'll pause, come back to that at the end. I have a side letter request. So we have a really cool new program at Cold Hollow. It's Education and Human Services, and we're trying to encourage our current students to want to go into one of those two fields. And it's fun to visit them and to see and hear what it is they're doing. There are students that have been placed in classrooms for co-op opportunities all over the supervisory union. So the McClure Foundation is looking to fund opportunities to encourage students to go into high demand fields. And teaching is, I think, one of the top careers that are most in demand in Vermont. So they have offered the program a $2,500 grant, and there are 5 teachers currently who are working as kind of a cooperating teacher for these kids in their co-op placements. So this grant allows for the opportunity for them to receive a $500 stipend for doing that. That's not something we usually pay for, so we asked for a side letter with the union because it isn't something we would budget for, but because of this grant opportunity, it's a one-time benefit that they would get from doing that. So I would ask the board for a motion to authorize Mort to sign on the board's behalf allowing us to enter into a side letter to approve that.
Motion? There's made a motion, all's in favor?
And then Vern wasn't able to be here today, but he did send me information on his section of tonight. He was going to bring you back two things. He was going to bring you back information about the facilities projects. So he has a quote for abating at Enosburg Elementary School. We spoke last time about the asbestos tile abatement. And he got a quote to abate 5 classrooms and a portion of the hallway that came in at $56,573. That quote does not include the final air clearance testing, but it includes all of the mastic and tile removal and all of the, I don't remember what you call it, but it's like that zero pressure where you plastic off everything. So that company gets all of the asbestos out, and then there's another company that would come in and put the new flooring down, and that came in at $11,000. That came in right around an hour before this board meeting. So that's what you're looking at if you want to take that. That project would be, he shared that visual with you, and that would be taking it into a 2-year chunk. So you would do half this summer and potentially half next summer, or whenever you choose to want to do that. So I don't know, Morgan, if is that something you're wanting the board to decide to build into the budget, or are you thinking that we would use?
We could do it either way. I don't know that I would need a decision on that tonight. If we are gonna continue to put money into the capital reserve fund, certainly be an appropriate use of that. We have started building in your budget amounts for larger projects, which we've historically had done in the past. We hope we get lucky with tuition kids.
When would you need a motion on that or decision on that?
We would probably want to start in January or February going through the process to collect bids, because it's over $40,000. We have to check a lot of boxes with the state, probably very quickly.
And so just to clarify, there's already funds in the capital
We have some funds in the capital
That would-
reserve fund, yeah.
that would take care of
And
that.
then hopefully we'll be adding more.
Okay.
I just want to point out, like, I'm glad you asked that piece, because I think that one of the things that for years we did not invest money intentionally to support the facilities. So we didn't have anybody whose job that was to look at the whole of the district and determine like how do we prioritize the needs. I could speak from when I was a principal, I was navigating those things without a lot of background knowledge about really honestly, what did I know about boiler replacement? It wasn't what I was trained to do. What we've been able to do is more strategically invest in some of those deferred maintenance projects, and those are some of the things when Vern gives you those reports back at either this district meeting or at the SU meeting, we're intentionally doing some of those updates that have been long overdue. So boiler projects and paving and all kinds of things in our schools, so that I just wanna state that I think it's a wise investment to keep investing funds to your facilities, because these are your facilities and we have to take care of them in order for them to continue to work for us for years to come. So the second piece that you had asked him information about were the repair quotes for the snack shack. And he said he had 2 quotes, one was $45,000, one was $50,000 to repair the snack shack. So
I did have a question about that too. And maybe you can answer this. Boosters recently did a Calcutta. Do we know what they raised? Because they were pushing this for the snack shack repairs, is what I had seen advertised.
I don't.
Okay.
when they turn that over.
Yeah, the money is coming, I can check the final report on this.
I'd just be curious to see, like,
I think that if you you don't have to make your decision on that tonight, but I think it would be good to give a direction about what the board's intention is, because I think that what I heard from the community member who brought this to the board a few months ago was that there's interest in the community to help in getting this done. And maybe whether that's through fundraising or trying to see if there are other people that would give a quote to be able to do this work. I just think we maybe need to take the first step in a direction so that we know how to get started.
Good on that. I say vote. Anything else? Just start looking at it.
Okay.
So the direction is related to getting quotes, is that
So
what we're saying?
maybe what you're asking for, because this also would require bids, because I don't think this is super current, but Morgan, would we do an RFP for this?
That's what I would recommend, yeah.
So do you want us to move forward with getting an RFP together and then going through that process? And we'll
We
look
talked
at,
about this a few board meetings back, correct? Correct me if
Yes.
I'm wrong, and he gave
No.
like a ballpark guesstimate of what he thought, and that's kind of where the last place we had it, correct? If I'm remembering.
yes, because
Okay.
he didn't have anything last time, but I didn't ask specifically what the source of the numbers was, but I
Okay.
believe he had spoken to some contractors. I don't think, these weren't formal quotes, but
Yep.
these were estimates.
Estimate.
So I think that if you were to tell us to go ahead and do an RFP, then you're not committing to doing it. Ultimately, you have
Right,
to
yeah.
approve an RFP, but at least it gives us a starting point, and we also can signal to the community. We do want to invest in the snack shack, and we want, I mean, I can speak from being a parent of lots of kids that went through Enosburg High School. That snack shack is important. It is where the kids go to the bathroom, and I know that
Just say the restroom building, right?
yeah, the restrooms, but it's also, the food part is important too. And there's some sense of building community when those boosters get together and they can do that and raise money to support athletics. I know Richford has something similar down at the rec field, and that's a really important part of their athletic community. So if we could signal that we're gonna go forward, we're gonna look for requests for proposals, and if the community wants to come forward and volunteer any additional fundraising, I'm sure that would certainly be welcome. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes,
Yeah.
sounds really
So
good.
I will communicate back out to the community member who spoke with us about this originally, and then Morgan, do you need a motion to do the RFP? So we'll report back next time on that. Okay, so Nate did he shared his program studies with you, and I said I would put this back on the agenda because some of you were not present at last meeting and we didn't want to volunteer anyone, but Nate has an ask that we're gonna bring back.
Okay, so each tech center has a regional advisory board. I partner with Northwest Tech Center, so it's us and them. And we need, per state regs, a board member to be a member of the RAB. This meets 4 times a year, and we usually try to send out a doodle poll, figure out when, because it also has to have superintendents from our service regions, which is Lynn, MU, and Maple Run, board members from all those places, and so and 3 employers, so try to find a time to get all that. It's recently been like a 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday with a Zoom option. And if you can't make it, it's not like here where it's big enough where the quorum is easier to attain. Yeah, I would love to have somebody in this room.
If it
fill in
wasn't
that-
around work day, I would do it.
I will say I'm on the RAB and it's fun. It's really fun to hear the employers talk about impact and give feedback and direction. And when you go to NCTC, Chef,
They have a culinary
Renee?
program, yeah.
he
Walk
always cooks for RAB.
So where are these meetings usually? It's
Um,
virtual or-
Virtual, sometimes here, sometimes at Northwest Tech.
Okay. But you don't have to go.
You don't have to go, you
It's
can
okay
be-
to just jump on virtually.
But it's mostly during work hours, so. That was my only idea. Yeah.
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Akua.
Send you some information. Thanks so much. You'll report back in a year how happy you were to make this decision.
She heard free food and was just like,
What was it that he won?
You want like a holiday baking competition on that.
okay, maybe I.
Yeah. So you wanna make a motion to appoint Akua as the CTE rep for the ERUSD?
Got a motion? Rachel made a motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Need you to go back one, yes. So, part of the problem when I get information an hour before the board meeting, I sometimes don't read the second text that came in. So thankfully, I just looked down. And the $11,000 for the flooring was per classroom, not for the whole thing, which
Okay,
makes a
that
lot
was
more
really cheap.
sense. So
Way less than what we thought.
I said 4 floors and he said, yes, less hallway, that is per room. So he can come back and talk to you about this next time. He's expecting to have to do that, so we'll hold on an RFP for that one for now. And we'll come back in January and talk about potentially an RFP.
Yeah, or we can move on the RFP because that's the only number that matters is contractors say they're gonna do it for it. And you have the ability to say.
Yeah.
Yes or no.
That's true.
I think we better go, right?
Yeah, to me, we're just gathering quotes anyway.
Alright. Perfect. Alright, now, Courtney, would you like to give us a tour of the pictures you chose this month?
Oh, so I wrote notes when I was stealing these from Facebook. They're in my office.
Or principals could.
Well, let me try. Okay, first picture on the left, top left, is Richford High School, and they were building a community food shop, right?
Pantry that's located at the town hall.
Okay. Which was really cool. It was a really cool project.
Yeah, they started it last year during PBL week, but weren't able to finish all of it, so they finished it during Thanksgiving, and it's, people can leave something and take something, and it's open 24 hours a day, you know.
The bottom picture, I actually can't explain. That's from Enosburg Elementary School, and I received that picture in an email. Middle picture is Enosburg High School.
It's actually my highlights, if you want, I can share it.
Oh, sorry.
Those are 10 students who auditioned for the All New England Music Festival. We had one student last year who got into the festival, but this year we have a much bigger crowd. And they did a lot of preparation, there was a lot of pride around it. So it was a really cool experience. And there's actually a video I think they posted on the website of the quartet, the male quartet, of 4 different parts that they did to audition. So they're pretty psyched, and it is a nice step forward for our choral program.
That would be a fantastic future spotlight.
Okay,
I would love that.
a mini concert?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring him in.
All right, we'll do it.
Top right is Colt Hollow.
Well, can I expand? That was a field trip, and without coordination,
They don't want to see me.
they're all wearing their koala hoodies or their automotive koala
That's pretty
hoodies.
good.
So that was just, Dax just saw it, just like, wow.
Maybe they did coordinate, maybe it was.
Maybe they did
student
offline,
spirit
but
week.
yeah, it wasn't anything that we did by explicitly.
Where were they visiting them?
I believe that was Heritage Toyota.
No.
Oh, where was it?
Well, according to the Facebook post, it was a community college.
It
Oh.
looks like Heritage Toyota.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
said Pittsburgh College.
Really?
I don't know where exactly it is.
Maybe I'm wrong.
It's not here.
I see
It was a
car.
very cool field trip
Yeah.
that was very engaging for us.
I love that.
And then the bottom picture is Richford Elementary School.
How was that Thanksgiving? Great.
Good turnout, you said?
Great turnout. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so Morgan, Feel free to jump in on this one. There's a lot I could say, but I'm gonna try to keep it high level. So there is a lot going on at the state level when it comes to education funding. I think that's clear to anyone who is listening to VPR or is turning on the local news. It's everywhere. People are talking about it. As you know, in the last legislative session, we have a commission on the future of public education in Vermont. They have been meeting since July-ish, I think, was their first meeting, and they have a really hard charge. And that is by December 15th, which is Sunday, I think. So really probably December 16th. They're charged with coming up with short-term, like, recommendations that are related to now in terms of how we can make some shifts in the education funding system in Vermont. So short-term recommendations are due next week. They have a longer charge by December 15th of 2025. They are charged with making longer-term recommendations about how we can make significant shifts around education funding in Vermont. So one of the pieces that has come, there are subcommittees that have come out of that commission. One of the subcommittees is the Education Finance Subcommittee, and these are public meetings, although it's very evident that there are things going on in between meetings. They have been developing a brainstorm list of ideas to reduce cost drivers within the education system. And I will say I am pleased to see that there are concepts on the table that are not just compressing school spending as being the only mechanism by which to improve the outcome of the education fund. So there are a lot of ideas on the table. They are talking about, I've shared with you previously the PICUS report, and they're talking about things like school size, district size, class size minimums. They're talking about what's the formula by which we fund education, and we've been doing this for years, and it's still, and you as board members have been tasked with learning Vermont's education funding system and all of its complexities, and even though we all know it very well, it's very hard to communicate it because it's so complicated. So there was a recent report at the end of November that was released that really took Vermont's education system and compared it to other systems throughout the state and pointed out that ours is very unique and that most systems actually don't fund education this way. The majority of systems across the United States fund, they do more of a formula, so an adequacy formula essentially. And so that is clearly one of the recommendations that is gaining traction and is being talked about in the Commission on the Future of Public Education. I would like to tell you that nothing is going to come out that's going to impact FY26, but I don't actually think that's true. And the timing, there isn't great alignment with the timing of when these recommendations are going to come out, when the legislative session begins, when our budgets, because this comes out December 16th, legislative session starts the first week of January. It takes several weeks for a bill to move its way through the legislative process, and we already are warning our budgets by the end of January. So timing is problematic if there are shifts that impact this year's budget. So we're holding tight and anxious to see where they go with this. Ratios are another piece that they talked about, and there are a lot of other ideas there as well. In terms of the legislative update, I'm going to keep these 4 topics in every agenda from now through the end of the year. Even though the legislative session the legislature is not in session, we're still getting tips out of the legislative bodies. So we're seeing discussions that are hitting the media from both House leaders and Senate leaders, from both Democrats and from Republicans. And I think that there is a very clear sentiment that people are aligning in that most people are not happy with education funding and the impact it's having on people's taxes. And they're setting the stage to say, we hear you and we see that you are not happy, and we agree that big changes need to be made, and the big changes that are going to get made are also likely going to be things that you're not going to be happy with. So I think it is, they're being clear that they're taking this seriously, they're going to make recommendations, they're going to be making some shifts, and some people may like them and some people may not like them. I think that it's pretty obviously being tipped, in my opinion, that the adequacy formula is something that it will grow legs in this legislative session for likely FY 27. So we'll keep you informed of that. At the same time that all these things are happening, the Agency of Education is pretty rapidly producing data and reports that we've never seen come out of the agency before. So we're seeing comparison data. They're looking at everything from outcomes to ratios. They're comparing within Vermont, outside of Vermont. There's a lot of information coming. They're looking at, as I said, that last report was on education funding systems. The most recent piece of information that I received from the agency is that they're looking not just at the ratio, but they're digging into actual class size. So all the data that they're using in terms of the reports for comparison purposes goes back to the 22-23 school year. So all of the data we submit from our system goes electronically to the state, and it's mostly generated from systems that we have in each of the systems across Vermont. So they're pulling out class size data from 22-23, and we're gonna have a very tight verification window within the next week or two. Like, we may have to verify, surprise, it's likely gonna hit the principals more than anything. We'll likely have to verify before the holiday break, was the last information that I had. So they're leaning into big ideas at the agency as well. They have used some of their money that's connected to their statewide ESSA plan, and they're doing professional learning trainings for administrators, central office administrators, and building principals across the state. And we have probably 4 trainings this week, and they're really looking at being much more strategic about budgeting and really thinking about what is the amount of a teacher that you need, and encouraging us to look through the lens of the cost of rounding up, which is something that we have done historically, where you might need someone for half-time, but you don't think you can get a half-time person, so you round up to full-time. And so there's a lot of that stuff that's happening. So I'm tipping you to that, because some of the things in that training, those are all lining up with some of those other recommendations. So I think we can expect to see some of those sweeping changes come. Morgan and I have been working with building principals this year. We monthly have an hour, and we'll sometimes have more than that. We meet virtually for an hour each month to talk about budget work focused on FY 27. And we also have some in-person time that we'll be setting aside to this. And it's really getting principals to help us think about how do we make decisions about our education spending, looking at, how we make decisions. Do we make decisions about certain things by school, or by number of teachers, or by number of students? And we're gonna be working through some of those formula ways of thinking about education decisions, not only for when times are tight, like they are right now, that graph that chart that Morgan showed you, and I think we've shouted this from the rooftop. We are one of the lowest spending districts in the state. If we shift to an adequacy formula, the idea of an adequacy formula is you've got where we are at the bottom, lowest spending, and the discrepancy between our spending and the top, there's this wide discrepancy. So the idea is they're not going to bring everybody down to us. It's probably gonna land somewhere in the middle. So the work we're doing is intended to also help us to be able to make decisions if there is an opportunity for us to think about those experiences that we can offer students, that we haven't been able to offer students for. So by doing this pre-work, our hope is that we'll be able to use this work both when times are tough and when they're a little less tough. So Morgan, what would you add to that?
I think that is good, and it's gonna be a much different update in January.
So any of the documents that I reference, I'm happy to send you anything if you, I'm guessing you're getting it through VSBA. So if you read some of those and you have questions, feel free to reach out to Morgan or I at any time. It's a lot to digest. We're going over it with principals as well, and I think we're probably overwhelming everybody with all the links and all the documents that are coming out. So that's all I have for that. And negotiations. So we are about to enter into negotiations for both teachers and for support staff. And we don't typically do both in a year, but we're going to this year. When we've done both in a year before, we typically will start with one and try to wrap that up before we finish the other. And that through mutual agreement with the union, we decided not to do that this time. So we're going to be negotiating both of those contracts, those collective bargaining agreements at the same time. So we'll have meetings that will start at 5 and we'll likely spend the first 90, I don't know the order that it's gonna go, but the example would be that we would spend the first 90 minutes with the teacher collective bargaining team. We take a short break and then we would shift into support staff collective bargaining team. On our side, it's mostly the same people, there's just like a one member switch because of a conflict of interest. They can't sit on both bargaining teams. So that's where we're at. We're starting next week is our first negotiation meeting, and we are scheduled through the middle of February, which we hope that we can have an agreement that we all feel good about. Before we go off to the break, that would be fantastic. Any questions on that? That's all I have. It's actually 3 things. We have to remember to go back to executive for personnel, the SRO direction, and a trip decision for Japan, because I want to just make sure Todd was clear about that. He does need that tonight to get the lowest rate for those families.
Principal's report, Kelly?
Everything is informational. The one thing I just would like to highlight, there's lots of highlights, but we had student-centered parent-teacher conferences or student-parent conferences, and the kids are just increasingly getting much better at this, and they all have they call their leadership portfolio that they use to present to their families, and they were just so articulate. We had a second grader who was struggling, showing his parent and struggling with one part of it, and the kindergarten sibling jumped in and said, "You know what this is? This is when, like we're measuring our reading goals." And so it was pretty sweet to see, like, we're just, it's, just becoming a school-like thing, so it's good.
It's all informational. I just would like to do a little shout out to Tractor Supply. I've had a great week this week. They donated, I guess there was a law passed in the state of Vermont where you're not allowed to sell clothing or boots with a certain water repellent on it. And so they donated a bunch to the church I attend, the Richford and Enosburg Methodist Church. And there was a lot left, and I asked the pastor if it would be okay if I gave some to kids. And they said absolutely. And so Taylor Soul, our homeschool coordinator, and I went down and got some at the church, and we gave it all out. And then kids were like, can I have that? And so we ended up making 3 trips down yesterday, and Taylor texted me last night, she goes, that was the best day ever. And I said, yes, it was the best day I'd had in a long time. And so we gave more out today, and yeah, it was very generous of them.
John's not here, so Matt.
Sure, I have a second one, in addition to the chorus one. That was good. Gave me a second to think up a second one. So, our food service lead in our building, Jen Bryce, won a grant for $5,000 for sort of like a backpack program. I don't know if you've heard of that, but to allow kids to take food home over weekends and vacations, which is pretty awesome. And she also got a $2,000 grant for storage and equipment. So we found a spot in the school that we think would be, it's currently, if you go in kind of the athletic side, and there is a, what do you call it, a vending machine that hasn't been in use for ages. But actually, it's a very large cubby, and for now, we're gonna put cabinets in there and renovate it, and so it's close to the cafeteria, but it's adjacent, so kids will be able to go by and get, food on their way for the weekend and so forth. So that'd be pretty cool.
Nate?
There was a college, went on community college, so that's right, and, part about December is December 20th, which is the annual FFA Community Wild Game Dinner. So if you can find some time around 11, lunchtime-ish, it's early for educators, but 11:30, swing by. You're all invited to taste some of the wild game that our students have harvested over the past year. So it's a wide variety of great recipes and wild games.
Very cool.
And you will. What do you think?
Yes.
Not everybody gets to say they get that kind of a t-shirt.
That's right. So we'll go back to the trip. If there's any discussion on that. And if you want to go forward with it, or that's it. Go forward with it.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
Allow them to get their early pricing for it.
Yeah.
definitely.
So Todd just texted me and said, let me know as soon as they make.
Then the second one is whether or not we want to continue with the SRO program. I say go ahead with that.
I think you should do a motion for Japan trip.
Oh, you want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Who made the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Okay, then the SRO, I know when we were going through the budget process, we had a lot of community outcry about that, about wanting that program. So I think it's a good program to have. I think there's some good points that brought up during that. Anybody else? I say go ahead with it.
So
Need a motion on that?
should you make a motion to have you start the negotiation process?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a
Sure.
motion.
I'll make that motion.
Who made the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
Aye.
Okay, next meeting is January 14th at Enosburg Elementary. Is there anything else? Before we go into executive?
Wait, I do have something. Can we go back to my slideshow? I found the right data for you instead of the SEO. It's the same exact though. There are 16 teachers who have requested column movement and 21 column movements total because some people are making double, so it's ironic that it's the same amount, but 38,250. Okay,
With that, we entertain a motion to go into executive. Sarah made a motion, all those in favor of going to executive?
Aye.